Hey, welcome to Rock and Recovery. Again, I am your host, Jay. Today I have a special guest, Shannon Curtis, author of No More Monsters on Your Bed. And she's struggled through life with addiction, and she's going to tell us how she got over it to become the superstar she is now. But before that, it is Suicide Prevention Month and Recovery Awareness Month. So if you know somebody that's going through it, make sure you check on them, check on your friends, check on your people, make sure that they're okay. And 988 for the US and Canada, 111 for the UK. If you're going through it and you need to talk to somebody, call them. They're there for you. That's exactly right. And now, welcome, Shannon.
Hi, thanks for having
Hello,
me.
Shannon.
Hi.
How's it going? How are you?
Great, doing great. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Thank you for accepting and scheduling. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. I think what you do is amazing. I think your transformation is amazing. So, and turning your pain into a purpose is everything that anybody could hope for. So, I'm really inspired to hear this.
Yeah, so my story, I have a lot of stuff. I have struggles with addiction, divorce, sexual trauma, infertility, kind of like you name it. I've gone through it all. And then starting in my 40s, I really started to go into a lot of the healing space work for myself. And then ultimately, that's what made me start Angel Goddess Healing, which I do now, the founder of, and help do people coaching, intuitive life coaching. I help them for people that are go work with plant medicine to do those sacred journeys, and I help them on the prep work and the integration part of it, and do retreats and different things like that. And so it's just kind of been across the board of all the things that I love. But I found that telling my story usually helps create this big impact, because it gives people hope that someone who struggled with addiction for 7 years of her life every single day, and to be able to come out of that on the other side, and like you said, take that all that pain, all that stuff that I was dealing with it, and turn it into purpose, has really helped. I wouldn't, like, you could say recovery, but I don't even think about it, because it's just who I am. It's become a lifestyle. And so it's not something that I really identify with. But when I think about the past and those 7 years, I can easily go back to that place and that lonesome feeling that I felt, and that longing just for that connection and that hope. And so that's what I like to do, is just share my story and to give some hope to people that are maybe struggling themselves.
That's awesome. Go for it. Stage is yours.
Yeah, so I would say that when I was 4 years old, my story kind of goes back to this, but I always like to start in the beginning. When I was 4, there was a family friend that happened to come by our house. My parents were working, and I was at home alone with the housekeeper. And so he asked if he could take me for the day. And the housekeeper called my mom. She didn't answer. So the housekeeper went ahead and let me go with this man. That's all I really remember from that story. It was just something about that. I come home later. My mom found a balloon that I had gotten from him, and then started this thing of what happened. And I immediately was like, nothing happened. And that's all I really remembered in my life. But looking back at it, there was all these signs of things. And I had a lot of female problems, endometriosis. I had surgery when I was high school. And that also started the pain medicine, because back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, was like you were so easily prescribed pain medicine, where it's not like it was now. And so I had built that relationship with pain medicine, that numbed physical pain. But as I got older and started dealing with some more stuff and those traumas that I wasn't really aware of, I was noticing I was gravitating more towards it, because again, it was alleviating what I thought was the cause of the pain. And so after I got married in my early 20s, we started trying to get pregnant. And right away I did, but unfortunately I suffered a miscarriage, and I had many after that. I ended up having 5. And so I remember the first time I went to the doctor's office and for an ultrasound, and there was no heartbeat, and I didn't know that that was even possible. The doctor sat me down, told me what was going on. But before I left, I got a prescription for Valium and for antidepressant. And it's so interesting looking back at that it was not a therapist number, here's someone for help with grief. It was literally prescriptions. And so that really started, again, that solidifying that bond with my addiction of something outside of myself is going to ease the pain.
Isn't that contradictory, though? Give you an antidepressant and something that's going to keep you pain free, which, depression, wouldn't that does it balance itself out, or how
Isn't
do
that,
you work?
that's what you would think, right? But that was,
Yeah,
again, I didn't know. I was, I think, 24 at the time, 25, and you're just in so much pain. I was in
just
shock. So I'm
wanting to
just kind of like,
forget.
okay. But right now, looking at it, that's what a lot of doctors did, is it's not giving out therapist numbers. It's here's a prescription, here's a prescription. And how many times we go to the doctor with something sick and it's probably from something else, but we get some kind of prescription. So that really started my understanding of seeing how my journey played out. And so through the miscarriages, I'd get pregnant. Obviously, I wouldn't take anything, but then I'd have to have surgery. And so you'd have pain medicine. And so it was this like just back and forth. And so the day my daughter was born, I had a C-section. And it was a beautiful miracle. And it was so, just waiting to have her. And so when I did, again, pain medicine. And I remember being in the hospital, and it takes everything away and you feel good. I'm kind of one of those 1 out of 10 people. I react differently. It gives me energy. It made me like want to do stuff and clean the house. So what happened with me was when I got home and my husband at the time started working out of town, here I have this prescription of pain medicine, a new mom, well, gave me energy. So I could do everything I needed to alone. And it started that thing of every day for 7 years of taking prescribed pain medicine. And it was such a journey. And before you know it, you lose yourself. And I never used it in the sense of just like your everyday stuff. That's why most people didn't even know, because it was such a struggle of like that balance of I didn't want to go party and do that, but I just wanted to feel normal. And I think that's the interesting thing with sometimes with people struggling with addiction is people think you do it to do all this other stuff. Sometimes it's just to feel normal. And so it took me down this journey of finally it all coming to light, because as we all know, you just can't play that. It's going to all catch up to you. And so when it did, my mom actually was the first one who asked me, do you want to get help? And it's crazy because I wanted to get help. As soon as she asked me, I said yes, probably before she could even finish the sentence. I was waiting for somebody to pay attention to me, someone to say, hey, I see
I
you.
see you.
Yeah, I see your struggles. What's going on? Instead of being like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? What about like, what's going on? Are you sad? Are you okay? Just checking in. And so I didn't really get that until that was offered. And I just literally the next day was on the plane. And I was very fortunate. I got to go to the Meadows in Arizona for 6 weeks in Wickenburg. And it's this beautiful recovery center, but it's based on trauma and a lot of PTSD. And so a lot of inner child work. And so
You got to be in a pretty safe spot to even start working on that trauma, because that make you want to go right back to it and numb it and it sounds terrible. And all trauma to everybody is terrible. Yeah, and those things, there's no board that says, oh, this is more terrible than this. It's all very traumatic. That's why they call it trauma. And for you to be able to work through that is impressive in itself, because
I was ready. I was ready. I was actually, I would say not the norm. When I showed up there, I was so excited. And this gives you a little glimpse into, I wasn't on full pain medicine. By then, I think it was Tramadol. And so it just kept me from like the withdrawals, because as a lot of people know, by then you're just trying not to go through withdrawal. Like I was even contemplating going to hotel for the weekend to like detox, because I've done that once and I do not wish that on my worst enemy. That was literally hell for at least a week, if not after that, but that first week. So I didn't want to do that. So I remember praying to God and on the plane being like, I just want to feel better. I was so ready to feel better. Anything felt better, sounded better than the way I felt. So interesting enough, I didn't have any withdrawals, had nothing. And I was able to jumpstart. I got there late at night. And the next day I'm in the class and I just started my journey. And I was so excited. People are like, why are you happy to be here? And I think I knew it was that spiritual transformation. I was ready to like let go of this pain that just wasn't me. And I started looking in the mirror and I didn't even recognize who I was. So that was a beautiful 6 weeks of being able to do grief workshops, really understand the pain of the miscarriages, family week, understand the origin of your family and all those traumas. And that's where I kind of started dealing with the 4-year-old self and what happened to me. And what I love about the Meadows, and it stuck out to me, was all of our work was done in groups. Everything was done in groups. Maybe once or twice the 6 weeks I had a private session. But the reason why they do that is to take away the shame, because that's what a lot of times we're in addiction, we feel alone. We feel like we are the only person going through it. No one's going to understand. We've done the worst things that are imaginable.
We're our own worst enemy. We're our own most toxic individual in our head. And
Yes.
we're the worst person that we know in our head.
Right. And so when you say that out loud, and I remember one thing I had to do, and it was terrifying. I was in a women's group, and it was maybe 5 to 10 women. I had to write down 10 of my worst behaviors I've ever done. And I had to say them one at a time, say it and look at someone, say it, look at someone. And you want to talk about trying to relieve like some shame. Say one of the worst things that you've said to a stranger and have to look them in the eye.
Look them in the eye.
And and it was crazy because I was so worked up about it. And then afterwards, you're like, you go around the circle and they're like, yeah, I did that or this or that. And before you know it, you're like, I'm not alone. I'm not alone, and I don't have to carry this shame. And so that was a big, big transformation for me on that. But I also was wanting to understand what happened when I was 4. And so we tried to do somatic experiencing, and I just couldn't, nothing came up. And so I remember the therapist saying sometimes you don't really have to remember, but the body remembers.
Right.
And so I walked away really renewed. I went to AA I did the 90 and 90. That was a big thing that I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. Even though I didn't struggle as much with alcohol, I resonated with AA. And so those 90 and 90, I think changed my life because those gave me the foundation and the tools. And even though I'm not active in AA now, those beginning things and those first 4 years of sobriety, of going and having that community and doing all of the step work really, really
being accountable.
Yes, being accountable. That's why the 90 and 90 was so important, because it was the first time, as people know, when you're in addiction, you leave stuff. Like, I don't do stuff. I'm like, nope, I'm not going there. I want to take a pill. Everything was based off of that. So to be able to say, I'm going to go do this every day for 90 days. And some days that's all I could do. I really struggled getting back home and being in life. And so but going to a meeting once a day made me, and this was before webcam. So you had to go in person. So so that really, really helped my sobriety. And that was about seven years ago. And I have a daughter who's 15 and just doing amazing. But about 7 years ago, or a couple years ago, I found myself feeling this thing again. And I'm like, okay, here it comes again. And it was more with my marriage of being authentic, being my most authentic self and not feeling like I'm fully doing what I'm supposed to do. And
you're going to have to tell your husband, and you're afraid you're going to get judged from him.
Yes, absolutely. Because I'm not like in love anymore. And it's just this thing of knowing I'm made to be something more than a housewife and a mom. And that's what was really hard. And so it took me probably a year to get the courage and therapy to really get the courage. But I was finding that when I say it was affecting my sobriety, I mean it like in a mental way, because that's what happens as you start building up those things. You're just looking for that next escape, the next reason to go back into it. And it was just too important for me. So I went ahead and went through all of that. And it's been a couple years, and that was beautiful. But my big thing was my partner who I'm with now, went to Mexico, and he sat with the plant medicine Ibogaine. And it's this kind of growing movement. We went to Ambio and they do all that. And they work with vets a lot. And it was actually for heroin addicts. Because when you go in the medicine, you get zero withdrawals. You don't go through withdrawals while you're in the medicine. Wow. Yes. And it's the sacred, very powerful. It's from West Africa. It's from the boga plant. And it's called Ibogaine. Kind of similar to ayahuasca, but very different in the ways of you have to be monitored because it can lower your heart. So they have medical supervision, all those things, but it is a powerful, powerful medicine.
Why isn't that more known?
It's coming. So Texas just passed a bill and we're trying to legalize it. So the sad thing is it's not legal here, but it's because the schedule that they gave, it says it has no medical use. And it's so sad. It's very interesting. That's a whole nother topic of why plant medicine that's literally grown is in the ground is illegal, but prescriptions that are made for profit aren't. And so that really got me on okay, which one? I've been on antidepressants for 7 years. I still deal with depression. So let me try this. And he went and it really helped. It clears up people's TBIs. Literally they're doing brain scans before and after. And these vets, it was on the Sean Ryan show. He went down there, and Marcus Luttrell, Brett Favre just went down there. So it is getting known, but I was able to do it a couple years ago and changed my life forever. Changed my life forever. But what showed me it's a dreamlike state, and you're kind of sleeping or you have a mask on and you're in a dreamlike state, but it's real. It's real as you and I talking. And one of the first things was shown to me, I had this presence of God kind of around me and wanted to know if I was ready to know what happened to me. And I instantly said, yes, I am here. That's what I'm here for. And so it showed me in that instant of what happened. And I was I was looking at my little 4-year-old self in the car on the left side in the passenger, and the guy on the right. And it showed me what happened and that I was molested. And in an instant, I felt relieved. I felt relieved because I was like, I knew, like my body knew, but I could not process the memory because again,
that's got to be like mind numbing and unnerving, because something happened and not being able to remember it or recall it. That's got to drive you. I bet you thought you were crazy at times.
I did. I remember thinking that I was like, because it's like my body knew, but that's what happens to a lot of people when you're, especially trauma when you're younger. Your brain cannot process what happened, so you get it fragmented. And those are those fragment memories where you kind of think of something here or there, but it's to protect me, because my 4-year-old self couldn't have handled that. And so in that instant, I felt relieved, but then I felt anger and sadness and heartbroken and all those emotions. I felt every emotion you could feel. But then I looked down, and it's visual, or I had a lot of visuals, and there was this like red yarn knotted kind of a ball that was in my stomach area, my pelvic region. And I looked down and I tell God, I'm like, this is bad. Like I could tell it was anger. And I was like, this is bad. And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, I need to give this back to the person. And so the perpetrator was standing right there, and I just pushed it and gave it back to him. Like, that's your shame. And so that was first part of like that healing. Like, that is not mine. I did nothing wrong. But then in the instant, I was sitting there looking at him, like, in God's right there, the image of God. And I'm seeing my perpetrator as God seeing me. No different. No different. And I was like, oh man, this is forgiveness. And in that instant, I knew I had to forgive him. I can't hate him, because what it was once I got that connection of forgiveness and what true forgiveness is about, letting go of the pain and the shame and all those things that you hold on to, and letting go and being free of that, I could see that this was a relationship in the way of, if I wanted to experience forgiveness, somebody had to do something to me. And so when the plant medicine, you're kind of in your higher self a lot more and spiritual. And so I could see it the way God saw it, in perfection of, this was someone, we made an agreement to have this exchange so my soul could experience forgiveness and what it truly feels like to let go. And so once I did that, everything else just doesn't matter. And all the addiction stuff and all the shame and the guilt and the numbing, I was like, how could I be mad at myself? I was literally protecting myself from something I didn't know. And so it really, really helped me see the, like, especially in today's society with the addiction, and how we're just trying to like fix it the wrong way, instead of stopping to look at, where's that pain coming from? Because I would imagine anyone who's listening that's in recovery or struggling now, there's some kind of pain that it stemmed from. We don't wake up and say, I want to be an addict. I want to do this. I want to be an alcoholic. It's not a glamorous life. And so I just really love to talk about like removing the stigma of it and start talking about the underneath stuff. And for me, it was sexual trauma. And I work with a lot of people and a lot of men who, unfortunately, a lot of their stuff deals with sexual trauma that has not been processed, that has not been talked about. Women too, but men seem to have a little harder time because it's just not talked about. It's that shame.
Right. Well, not only that, it's that whole, I mean, for men, it's feeling that the weakness, it's the weakness. It's that feeling weak and feeling you would let somebody do that, you know? So it's really hard for a man to go through that, because all what we're supposed to be is, we're supposed to be the strong family model, the role model, the alpha male, that person, that protector, when you couldn't even protect yourself.
Right. And so what I do with a lot of people, so if I had a client like that was saying that couldn't protect, maybe you envision the age of that. If you were a little boy, and how was that little boy supposed to protect himself? And so when you can come from compassion and see yourself from that place, not a grown man, A grown man, yes, you have that, you have other tools, but your 4-year-old self didn't have that. And so that's that place of you have to go back to the trauma. And I do a lot of, again, inner child work stuff with people, because you have to go back to what it is like for a child, because we're trying to like see it in the eyes of now, and it's just different. And so I don't know why my 4-year-old self didn't want to tell, but I would imagine it's because I didn't feel comfortable enough and bad, and felt my mom's questioning is invasive, and I didn't want anything to do with that. And so that's that compassion. And the other side of it is, what if I did tell? And then I don't know how my dad would have reacted.
Right.
It could have literally changed the whole trajectory of our life.
Your
And then
whole
maybe I
family
would have been,
dynamic. Yeah.
yes. And so those are those things that I help people see in gratitude. They happen for a reason. And I always say it happened for me, not to me. And so when I say it happened for me, that's reclaiming my power, being like, it happened for me because now I know how to move through it. So I can go talk to people like you and help people understand that forgiveness is possible when you know how to take your power back and say, oh, I agreed to this in some level, and I might not understand it. I'm not okay with it. But the only thing I really can do is control how it's affecting me. And so I've learned, when I take all that pain, what are you going to do with it? Am I going to be a victim of it, or I'm going to turn it into the most beautiful thing, in writing my book? And that's another way of doing that. But that's how you truly heal pain, is by understanding it and connecting with other people, because everyone has pain. No one goes through life without pain. But suffering, I feel like, is optional. Suffering is when you want to sit in it and you want to use it as an excuse. If I don't have to do anything, I can be an alcoholic addict, an asshole, because this happened to me. And I change it. I'm like, no, it happened for me. So it's got to be a reason why. Because the God I know is not a God that's going to punish me and make me go through these things just to be me. There's got to be something underneath it. And so that's what I really love to do, is just help get underneath what's really going on with addiction.
Wow. I mean, what does true forgiveness to you feel like, though? How do you get to that point? I mean, because we can say we forgive somebody, we can say that I forgive this person, but what does that feel like?
The simplest way is it feels like love. You're able to love that person, not the behavior. The only way I can say it is loving from a higher self, because my ego self, my wounded self, is like, hell no, that's not something. But when I come from the place of God or Jesus or Buddha, I love all of that. It come from something outside of yourself, a higher source, something that's loving. There's got to be a reason. And so for me, I found the easiest way is to find love for that person is by finding compassion and gratitude. And sometimes I tell people the only gratitude you could get is thank you for showing me who I choose not to be. Right? Literally,
True.
that could be the only thing. You have an
Very
abusive
true.
parent. Yeah, I had people that be like, well, how do I find the good? And, I was beat every day. Right? That is a hard one. But there's something from it where you're like, I bet you're not going to repeat that behavior, or that taught you
Right.
discernment.
That
And
taught you
so,
what you don't want to do.
yes. And so those are those things. That's why I'm okay with my addiction, because those 7 years taught me how I don't want to be now. And so now I have discernment, and now I have things where I'm like, oh, if I start doing these behaviors, I'm probably going to end up there, because guess what? It's not about the pill I was taking. It was about what I was trying to numb. And so that's where I really feel like forgiveness, it's feeling the pain, but it's moving through the pain, not getting stuck in it. And I think that's what happens. And then when you add addiction to it, you're just numbing and numbing and numbing. And it's almost like it's going to come out eventually. And so it's just like, do you want it a slow, painful process, or you want that resolution of sitting in the pain and then letting it go? And it is possible. I work with people all the time. Now, I'm a big advocate on plant medicine. Not everyone, like I always say, find your own path. It's just for
Right.
me, the medicine helped me dealing with these really hard topics of sexual trauma, like how you could possibly understand it. I probably would have gotten there, but not nearly as fast without sitting in the plant medicine, because what happens, it removes you from your ego. It removes you from your human self, and it just makes you see things from a different perspective. And so when you're seeing them for a higher perspective, that's when you start getting the understanding.
Did you notice before you did your walk
Mhm.
that your trauma was spilling out onto people, like
Mm,
you're basically bleeding on people that you didn't mean to, but
mhm.
it's that inner trauma, that stuff that you didn't work on was showing in your character and towards other people. Did you hurt?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I would say that the biggest thing I would say in my addiction was my ex-husband, was that it bled over to that. I was really dying for him to pay attention to me. And our marriage was just kind of showing where it was just going separate at that point. We were kind of just strangers. And I stopped wearing my wedding ring. And I wanted him to see if he would notice, see if he would notice. And it wasn't that thing. So then I upped it, anyways, I ended up having an affair, a very short one, but it was an affair to get the attention. And that's ultimately what got the attention and then led me to treatment. But I would say that's what spilled over, was instead of like hurting him and causing him great pain that he deals with, and I've done my amends, but I would say that was a huge one, was spilling over, because it wasn't about causing him pain. It was just, I didn't
right.
know how to say, somebody pay attention, who cares about me and what's
Look at
going on.
me. Look at me. Ask me how
Mhm.
I'm doing,
Yes.
focus on me for a minute. And,
Mhm.
let me tell you why I'm doing
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
It's
and I think
crazy.
that was harder for him, the affair, than the 7 years of pain medicine. And I remember being like, gosh, and I was like, that's a little ego stuff, because I was like, here it is, like 7 years I suffered. Right. And then it's kind of, he attaches it to those 2 weeks or whatever. And so I always find that interesting. But yeah, 7 years of every day thinking about it. And I know people who struggle with it. It's on your mind all the time. You're like, where am I going to get it? And it's not like alcohol where you can just go to the store and buy it. Right.
Right.
Like, mess, you got to go to the doctors, you got to figure out. And it was just a constant thing in my life that was so draining. And so spilling over was probably my energy, was
Right.
just being tired.
In
Mhm.
those early days of recovery, did you find it? How did you cope with the early days? Like, did you still get cravings, withdrawals? Or I
Mhm.
know you said you were ready. You were
Yeah.
like, let's go, finally,
Yeah.
But how do you cope with those early cravings, if you had any?
So I fortunately did not. I again think huge in your community, and so I encourage anyone, no matter what. There's the AA. There's one, and I forget what, Refuge Recovery, and I think it's like AA but for Buddhist. It's a little different. That one. There's anything, your church, whatever, some kind of community. I found, and the people I work with, again, who go do plant medicine, when they come back, it's so important, that integration part, because if you go back to the same people and the same behaviors, you're going to find yourself craving it, because it's just like that routine. And so I changed everything. But the biggest thing was going to meetings every day and having that community of being around people. And I was fortunate. I had a spouse who didn't drink. So that made it easy. But
Whole
no, I
lot
did
easier,
have,
yeah.
yes, that made it huge, because then it was just normalized in the sense of that's not what we do. But no, I had kidney stones one time. I almost broke my arm. I had to go to the emergency room for that. And they offered it to me and I said no. And I remember kind of having to get a little mad at the pain or addiction. I remember even saying like, F
Right.
you addiction, because I had to be like, I'm stronger. You're not going to like break me.
Right.
And so when I had kidney stones, the only time I did was I had to have surgery. And so in the hospital, they gave it to me and that was it. I didn't come home with it. And I had a stent for 2 weeks. That was real uncomfortable. And I got through it with Tylenol. So I fortunately did not. But I did go back to drinking for a little bit, which was kind of interesting. So it was about 4 or 5 years I didn't. And I was fine with it. I only stopped drinking to kind of say, I'm sorry, and to make amends and be like, that's how serious I am. I don't need it. It's not a big deal to me. And then my ex kind of brought it up after like 4.5 years. Have you ever thought about it? And I'm like, I don't really like, I liked the taste of it, but I'm fine either way. And so we made that decision together that I started drinking again. And it wasn't, again, didn't affect me. It was fine. I was able to manage it because I was really into my health, my mental health. But after I went to Mexico and did the plant medicine, it just fell off. Like, I don't remember what day. And I remember going to AA and you get the chips and you're like 30 days, 60 day night, and you get all the chips. I don't remember. It's been over a year right now and I don't know the date. I just found that it didn't serve me. And I find that once you truly heal what you're numbing, it goes away because you're only going to it to try to numb something. So once I
Right.
understood that, I didn't need it. So I
So once
fortunately
you
did
brought
that.
that trauma out to,
Yep.
once it's out there, it can't hurt us anymore.
Right. Yes.
That's the plain and simple truth. Once your trauma is
Mhm.
out, Once
Yeah.
you've told somebody or multiple people and it's out, it can't hurt you.
No.
No matter what it is, you've already lived it. You've already dwelled in it. You've already sat in it. You've already let it ruin your life or
Yep.
build your life. You've already let it drive your driving force forever, whatever else. So once it's out there, it cannot hurt you. Plain and
No.
simple.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's nothing to be scared of. Again, like your book, The Monsters Under the Bed.
Yeah.
It's literally once it's out,
About
it's
that.
gone. It's
Yes.
gone
Yeah.
because once we let people know, once we let it go, the good old song from Frozen or Ice Age or whatever.
Oh yeah, let it go.
Let it go. Once we let it go, it's gone. It
It's
can no
gone.
longer come back and bite me because I've already dealt with it.
Yeah.
It can no longer hurt somebody because it can't hurt me no more. And it's just crazy that how much we let trauma dictate our lives until that point where we say enough.
Yeah. And I think it's because we don't know, we're not taught to walk through it. So I have a 15-year-old daughter. And I remember when I was telling my mom about getting divorced and her being really worried and concerned with my daughter. And I remember looking at it as an opportunity of telling her, well, the one thing that I cannot protect her from is pain in life. She's going to get her heart broken. She's going to not get into the school. She's going to get whatever. So I was like, why can't I use this divorce as a teaching tool for my daughter to walk through disappointment? Because that, again, is teaching her to feel the pain when she needs it, not coddle her, but create a safe space for her, like I do with my clients. And so I really think that that's why trauma is going to happen, because you're human. And I truly believe you can't get out of that, but it's
Very
do you
true.
know how to move through it? And we don't. And so it gets stuck in our body and we hold on to it. And I really think it's from the shame. It's from the shame of not talking about these bad things that we do. And then we think we're bad. I wasn't bad because I took pain pills.
Right.
It wasn't bad. I was literally in survival mode of my own trauma. But the
Hiding
shame
from yourself.
Yes, but the shame that I got from some family members and stuff, that was really hard. That was really hard because they didn't understand. They just saw me as an addict versus I wonder why. And that's why I always tell people, be curious, because if you meet someone homeless off the street that's an alcoholic, I guarantee you there's probably a good reason.
There's trauma.
Yes.
There's something behind everybody's addiction and why they're addicted. It's not the same across the board, but I guarantee you one thing is the same across the board is we're coping with something the wrong way because we don't know how to cope with it the right way. We don't want to feel the pain and we don't want to affect anybody else through that pain. So we numb ourselves and hopefully that pain will go away or it'll be less of a burden to us because we're our own burden. We feel like we're our own burden. And, once we quit being a burden to ourselves and starting to talk about it and, throughout all, I will say find your people because you have to find people that you trust, find your family. And when I say family, it doesn't mean the same blood. It means family that you can trust, that you consider closer than family, because I'll be real, I didn't have much family that I could, rely on because I was an addict. It's not that I couldn't rely on them, that I didn't want to put them in that position of saying yes or no, or here, or help or not. So I literally ghosted most of them for almost 20 years. And just now, after my addiction was taken from me in the worst possible way, and I've never had a craving yet. I say yet, and I'll knock on wood. And, because I talk about it now, though. I talk about everything that's bothering me. If there's something bothering me, it's not hard to know because facial expressions and demeanor, somebody knows, and somebody's going to ask me, Jay, what's wrong? Fine, I'll tell you, So
and
I
that's
don't
beautiful.
bottle stuff up anymore.
Yes. And that's that thing that's going to keep you from having the craving, because the craving is craving something outside of yourself to subside what you're feeling. And so you're learning, your new tool is like talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Getting it out. And so as long as you get it out, you're not going to have that craving, because I would imagine you crave like talking to people and just like having me on and enjoying the podcast and sharing the message. That's been your new like tool. And so that's what I tell people, find your tool. There's so many different ones. Just find your passion in life. And that's what I say is when I got divorced a couple of years ago, I had no credit card in my name. I couldn't get a credit card. I had nothing. I started over, left my house, gorgeous, left everything. Now I have my own home. But the biggest thing I'm proud of is I have a business that's in my name that is made off of me being my most authentic self. And that's what's so important is how many people can say you're making a living off of being yourself. And that's my hope for everyone is to find that passion, find that thing that keeps you, like you said, accountable, keeps you wanting to do this work, because then you're not going to have those addictions, because it's all not that I have pain in my life. I have bad things that happen all the time. I have some things that people wouldn't even imagine that are going on now. They don't know it, because I know when to like go through it and move through it, but not get stuck in it. And so that's what's
and
really
we learn who we can trust. Like you said, you went through that program in Phoenix or in Arizona, and you had to speak your flaws out and face somebody. That's hard work. That's hard work right there. But that's going to show how much stronger you are and how less of that you have become, because if you see these flaws, it's like, I'm my own worst judge. So I guarantee you nobody else thinks that way about me. It's just me thinking that way about me, So it's like, maybe I am not that bad. Okay. So, and it helps. It really is healing. Talking about it, sharing stories is way more healing than anyone would ever expect, because it puts all your shit out there and you don't have to be scared of it anymore.
Yeah. And human connection. I think that's the other thing with the addiction and alcoholism. It creates this separation from us, that we're the bad ones. We're the bad ones. We're the good ones. We're the ones with the problem. And so I loved AA, but the only thing I remember sometimes, and I did a lot of therapy, and you're always like, you're the problem. And I'm like, yeah, but there's other people. And so what I learned is they have a problem too. It's just not mine to address it, is what I learned. And so I always try not to like beat myself up that yes, I had that. But what I learned is going down my journey, and even with plant medicine, and sometimes in the recovery community, that can be looked at one way or the other. For me, I found that, again, I don't use anything to check out. I use it to check in. So when I use plant medicine, it is literally to check in with spirit, to see what I'm doing, heal the things I can't see, use them to my advantage. It is not to check out, to go party, to numb out. And so that's where I think we've gotten a little bit twisted. Like with cannabis and stuff, people use it to check out, to literally get high, to go away. And it's like, no, when you learn to use it to really check in, it actually makes you feel way more. And that's why a lot of people get anxiety, because it starts making them feel, and they don't know how to deal with the feeling. And so that's where I really, in the recovery community of, it doesn't matter, pick your path. It's just don't be judgmental of it. Just be curious. And for me, opening up to being curious led me down this beautiful path and allowing to help other people go in their journey.
I think that misconception of most people are in AA or NA or a formal recovery are judgmental keeps people from going into recovery, keeps people in that cycle, because you know what? I know AA people they're a cult of crazy people that are going to judge me because I like my coffee with cream, or I don't drink coffee, or whatever the case may be. And I had a bad experience with AA anyway. I always went because that's where I either sold or picked up, or because the judge ordered me to, So I already had that misconception. All these people over there are still doing this shit, but they're being hypocrites and saying, no, don't do that.
Yeah, I didn't have that, fortunately, but I did have the kind of older men that weren't the healthiest. And I'm a young girl coming in by myself.
No 13 steppers.
Yeah, I unfortunately got put in a position of an older guy that was trying to take advantage of me. And again, I'm like a couple months sober. And I remember that being hard, because you think you're going in there to get help. And what I realized is everyone's on their journey. And just because they're showing up doesn't mean. And because I did so much of my work, and I also knew not everyone got to experience the 6 weeks of this very, very intensive center. And so I knew I was dealing with a little bit more knowledge and tools. And I think that's why I wanted to become a coach instead of a therapist, was because because I get to share my story. So I don't have to like sit here and act like my life's perfect. I've never been through anything. And let me tell you, you know, how to help you. No, like I've been through shit. I've done bad things.
Let me tell you what I went through, and you can debate on yourself whether I know anything or not.
Right.
You know, type thing.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I'm going off of what worked for me. And so that's where it's like, do AA, do whatever you want to do. But I always try to tell people with anything, finding the power within yourself, because when you find the power within yourself, you're not going to go outside of yourself ever again. Because what if there's a meeting that you can't go to? What if there's a therapist you can't call? You know, all those things that we start to kind of, you know, panic about. So when you trust and know I have the tools, whether it's breath work, I'm a big meditation person. It's all those things to calm the nervous system and calm down and kind of check in with myself. Then I can really understand what's that little twinge that I'm starting to feel. Because if I don't listen to it, it's going to keep growing and growing. And then, as we know, in addiction, it just comes.
It gets in our head and it stays there until all of a sudden we do it one way or another. We work on it, or it works on us, one or the other.
Exactly.
You know. And I noticed I know you said you started that addict thinking. You weren't relapsing, but you were in that addict thinking. And I think that's the biggest first step of relapse and to catch it right then, instead of when you're at the bar getting ready to order something. And it's like, oh, okay, I better call somebody.
Yeah,
you know?
that's putting yourself in a really hard position.
Right.
And it's almost like you're wanting to fail. I mean, like, let me make it the hardest I can on myself, and then let me see. And again, that's not compassionate on yourself. Like, why would you go to a bar? Why would you do? And so if you were to reach out before without judgment, I could be like, cool, well, let's talk about that. Why are you wanting to go to a bar? Well, I'm lonely.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe let's do this or that. And so a lot of times it's because you're lonely in connection. And that's that thing of understanding yourself, understanding your feelings, not numbing them. Because once you understand your feelings, there's some power in that. And it's like,
there is. Once we're able to handle our feelings and not let somebody else affect the way we go through life.
Yes.
That is very powerful in itself. That's taking your power back. That's not saying, not today, not tomorrow, not ever am I going to let somebody make me feel at my lowest.
Absolutely.
And once you're able to do that, it might sound narcissistic. It might sound, you know, whatever else, but it is about self.
Yes.
Recovery is about self.
Yes.
I don't care if that sounds bad or not. I really don't care about another person and what they think about me, because you know what? I need to think good about myself.
Yeah, I love that. I always try to say I'm not self-centered. I center myself. And so that's a big thing of saying I have to center myself. I have to do that, because if I don't, how am I going to go help my clients? How am I going to be a better partner? How am I going to be a good mom? And so, like you're saying, those are those things that you're speaking is like how we got into addiction, was worrying about other people. I don't want to say no. I want to be the cool kid. I want to try smoking. I want to try drinking.
Making somebody else feel like we're not worth it, or not enough, or too much sometimes, or just a worse person than we already think we're the worst. But to make us think that and feel that is even worse. It makes it far, far worse for somebody else to make us think that.
Absolutely.
For somebody else to make us feel that. And once we stop that, once we put up that boundary and say, no, this is what I am not going to accept, we start to heal.
Yes.
You know, because we don't want to sit in it ourselves. So what do? We either heal or we go back to addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why your community is so important.
Yes.
And I see this a lot with my clients. When one person comes in and gets better, or they go and do plant medicine and they come back with their spouse. And it's always so interesting to see, because what happens is you have a spouse that maybe has been walking on eggshells because they don't want to cause you to go drinking or off the deep end. So they're kind of doing that. Then you come back and I'm good. It kind of puts it back on them. And then they have to go through this process. And so it's either you get two people who are going to go on the journey together, or you get two people that usually go like that. It's just because when one heals, it gives the other one the opportunity to heal. But if they don't,
The
it's
encouragement.
Yes. Yeah, it's really hard to have a successful relationship without two people. And I always say, I don't want someone who's perfect, because I'm not perfect. I want someone who's willing to look at their imperfections.
Willing to better themselves.
Yes, and see what they are and understand them in a compassionate way, and understand mine. That's the point of a relationship. I'm going to bring up traumas. You're going to bring up traumas of mine, so I can heal them. And then
it should be a learning process. Never stop learning from your partner, whatever that looks like, but never stop learning. We teach each other how to treat each other, but never stop learning how they want to be loved or respected or cared for. Never stop that learning process, because once that learning process stopped, the relationship goes stagnant.
Yeah.
There's nothing new to explore.
No.
And listen to them, listen to their words, not just their words, but what they're saying below the words.
Yeah, I love that.
It's hard, because I can say I'm good and I'm great, but to take it, are you really? What's really going on? And sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's just, I don't have a thought in my head right now. Really, but
yeah. And it's learning not to take on their pain.
Yes.
Is a big one, because that's what I've learned with my partnership, that we have such a beautiful, to where when I have stuff that comes up or he has stuff that comes up, we give each other space to figure out, okay, is this mine or is this his? So when I do the ego work and I'm like, okay, was this coming from my pure heart? And if it really, really was, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm good. It's his stuff. So let me give it back to him, let him deal with it. But then also let me be compassionate and a little bit more understanding. But it's that fine, those boundaries you were talking about. That boundaries are really important, because it gives you discernment of what's yours and what's not yours. And what happens is, especially a lot of addicts and alcoholics, I found they're very sensitive people. I was an empath. I was very sensitive. I took on everybody's stuff. So that made it even more want to numb it, because I didn't even know what was mine or other people's. And so boundaries are really important for people in recovery, because I do think they're some of the most compassionate people ever out there. And that's why we almost drowned it, is because we're trying to help everybody else and we don't save ourselves.
Right. I've had, I think 5, this is only Tuesday, but I've had, I think 3 or 5 people from my past, when they knew me as an addict and knew me in prison, that have now been following me. And they're like, Jay, because of you, I've been sober a month. And Jay, because of you, I'm going on almost a year sober because of you. And these are people I've done prison time with. These are people that I sold drugs to on the street, that I used them with, that we ran crazy, we ran wild. And they're saying, because of you, Jason, that we are able to make it another day. So please don't quit what you're doing, because you're doing good.
Yeah. And that's what your pain, it turns your pain into purpose and your passion. And that's what keeps you, I'd imagine, helps you, because you see what you're doing. All you're doing by helping healing other people is healing yourself. And that's why I always tell people, I'm not healing people. I'm not doing anything. I'm giving them the space to learn that they have the power to heal themselves. And it's just through love.
Which brings me to, tell me what inspired you to write a book, and tell me about your book.
Yeah. So what inspired me was, it's No More Monsters Under the Bed, Shining Your Light on the Dark. So as you can imagine, it's about, for me, it was about sexual trauma. It can be for anybody. It's just about a monster under a bed, and a little girl named Lucy, who's too scared to go to bed at night because she doesn't like the dark. And so she has a mom who comes in and wishes her good night. And then she wakes up and there's this beautiful angel that comes to help her and understand the darkness and to bring her a special flashlight. And so then they go on this magical, real spiritual journey of under the bed and looking at the dark. And once she looks at the dark, she realizes it's this beautiful, magical, sky mystery thing. And then they go into this other journey, and she meets 7 animals that end up being spiritual animals that kind of goes with the chakras. And ultimately she ends up finding that her monster was her greatest teacher of unconditional love. And so it's walking her through, which is very reminiscent of mine, of, are you willing to take that flashlight, and are you willing to shine your light that you have inside of you on these dark places in your life? And once you do, the most magical things open up. And so it was just very much just kind of channeled through me. It came through me on like a night. I wrote it the next day, and then it took me probably 9 months. I don't know. It's been coming up on a year that it came out, that I wrote it. And then that journey, and my tattoo artist, I had been wanting to get a tattoo for a while. And I just found him randomly online, just trusted spirit. And I went to him, and all of a sudden I was like, had this download. I'm like, I know he's going to be my artist. I just know it. And so I asked him after, and I said, you're going to be my artist. You just don't know it yet. And he was like, I'll do it. I'll do it. And I told him the story, and
That's
it's
awesome.
been this beautiful relationship, and the drawings in it are just out of this world. And he drew them all, and it just came to life. And which really helps, because it's can be a heavy topic of facing your fears, but in a way of drawing. And what I love about the book is it doesn't matter the ages. Yes, it's a picture book maybe for younger kids, but it is literally anyone can read it and face their monster and understand that. And then, like I said, all these gifts that we have, basically we just forget. We forget all our power. We forget who we are. And so it's a journey of like remembrance and finding that, that power within.
And what platforms is it available? Where can we get this
so
book?
It's almost on Amazon. They're shipping them, but if not, they can go on my website, angelgoddesshealing.com, is where it is now that they can purchase it. And then probably in the next, couple of weeks, it'll be wherever you can purchase. So it's just like my little love letter to myself. Honestly, it's to my 4-year-old self, because I thought about it and I was like, why was I, writing this? And I think it's because that little girl wanted her voice, her story to matter. And how cool is that to know that what I went through again might be something to help someone else who's going through that, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, trauma, divorce, some monster that's scaring them and giving them the courage to, face their fears.
Well, thank you for coming up here and sharing. Thank you for accepting my invitation. I mean, it's been a great journey. I'm still going on this journey. Thank you for sharing your story and bringing hope to so many others that it's going to help. So all stories are somebody else's survival guide, period. But sometimes I like to hear other people's stories. It keeps me going. It inspires me to do better. So I appreciate you being able to be open and honest and telling your story and telling us about you and what you do. And I look forward to hearing more from you. But that is our time. And this is Rock and Recovery. And that's Shannon. Go check out her book. You need to check out her book. It sounds fantastic. And give her a website a curious glance. Angel Goddess Healing. Go for it. What do you got to lose? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me. And just thank you for anyone who was listening.
All right. You heard it. Rock and Recovery. Bye.